Okay, we're going to work a little bit more on equivalent fractions, but we're going to think about it backwards this time because we can take a more complex fraction and simplify it to a smaller fraction. Same fraction, but just a simple version, a simpler version. Okay, so here's the first one. It's just a basic circle. It's divided into a certain amount of parts. Why don't you freeze your screen and write down the name of this amount of shaded pink on this fraction? What's the name of the pink shading on this fraction? Okay, you might want to pause quite a bit on this one to kind of work through it, give yourself think time. So we have 2, 4, 6 pinks out of 2, 4, 6, 8. So your denominator would be 8, numerator would be 6, 6 eighths. We're going to find an equivalent fraction, but this time instead of splitting the sections and making these numbers larger, we're going to go smaller. Is there a way to, instead of splitting them, combining some of the pieces? And we'd have to do it equally for the whole fraction. We couldn't just erase this line here and this line here and leave the rest. We've got to do that equally. So let's go around and take away every other line. So it would look more like this. And maybe you could just see that with the black lines there. Maybe you could kind of see that that was a 3/4 fraction. But this would be 3/4. Let's put the lines back on. Can you visualize that? Can you kind of like, maybe it takes a little squinting of your eyes, but can you see the 3/4? Can you visualize 1, 2, 3, 4 sections instead of 8? So even if this line's here, that sometimes it takes doing that. As you get better at fractions, you can look at a fraction and you kind of know about where it would be even before you count all the pieces, especially fractions that are really common, like 3/4. This is a really common fraction. We can just see that Pac-Man shape and know it's 3/4. Let's try this bar. This bar has what? What's the name of the fraction? How many equal pieces and how many are shaded? Pause your screen, write that fraction. You should have written 3 out of 9. 3 out of 9 equal sections are shaded blue. Can you think of another fraction? Can you see maybe another fraction if you would get rid of some lines? Or can you think of another way to do that? Pause your screen and write another fraction if you can see it. 1/3 is another way of writing this fraction. And this is another common fraction that you'll probably get better and better at recognizing. 1 out of 3 equal sections. Can you see it? Can you see 1 out of 3 equal sections? You can take away 2 lines in each area and see it better this way. Well, yeah, that's definitely 1/3. With the lines back on, can you still see the 1/3? 1/3. So what we did was we took the 9 and we divided it by 3 because we were going back to our original denominator. 3 and 3 divided by 3 would be 1. Don't worry about that so much. That's a 4th and 5th grade skill, knowing when to multiply and divide. But know that that is something connected. And if you're ready for it, you can use it. So it went 3 times as small. So we divided it by 3. Got rid of our lines. So 1/3. Let's look at the number line. Go ahead and pause your screen and write the fraction that represents where the red dot is. It's right there. You should have written, because this is one whole and there are 10 equal sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4/10 would be the fraction that represents this red dot here. Now, is there a way to simplify this? Can you see some of the lines and can you group this in any way? We know 10's even, so we know that we could always cut 10 in half to make it a simpler fraction. Any even number you see, oh, that's a good thing. It's easy to cut back an even number. Let's do that. Let's make every 10th stand out a little bit more. Or every 5th, I mean, sorry. So those are the 5ths, and just kind of blend out the 10ths. Can you see how there are 5ths and the red dot is really on 2/5 as well as 4/10? Yeah, these are equivalent. We cut back our 10 to 5, so we divided the 10 by 2 and got 5. we put these two sections together. And we have to do the numerator too. So 4 divided by 2 would be 2. It's got to have that same relationship. So 4/10 is equal to 2/5. And maybe you could see that ahead of time. This one is definitely harder. And it's not as common as a fraction, but it's common. 2/5 is a common fraction. It'll become way more common when you get to 4th and 5th grade and work on percentages. So let's look at this last one. This one is super challenging because it's 2 wholes. What's the name of the fraction that represents this blue dot? Write that down. If you look at just the whole is divided into 9 equal sections. So 9th would be the denominator. Okay, we worked with 9ths up here, didn't we? And then we would know this would be 9 because 9/9 would be a whole. 10, 11, 12. 12/9 represents where this red dot is. Let's make it red now. So that's 12/9. Is there another way you could simplify this? Could you get rid of some of the lines? Do you see some popping out? Do you know what number fits perfectly into 9? Pause your screen and think about it for a minute. This one's tricky. What could we break this down into? If you said thirds, that would work. Let's see what the thirds, let's make the thirds a little bit longer and a little bit darker. Can you see the thirds now? What would be another way of saying this fraction? We have thirds as the denominator, and then this would be 1, 2, 3, 4 thirds. So maybe you came up with the fraction this way, or maybe you just broke your 9 down by 3 times and put 3 and 4. Both of those strategies work. This one's a lot more complicated. We'll keep working on problems like this. But this is a simple version of 12/9, equivalent fractions.